My name is Cade, and this is the Arcade Cast. In the 31st of July, 1928 issue of the New York Daily News, the newspaper's film critic Irene Thyrer began grading movies on a scale of 0 to 3 stars. 3 stars meant excellent, 2 good, and 1 star meant mediocre. And no stars at all means the picture's right bad, in Irene's own words. So, according to my scant Wikipedia research, for nearly 100 years film critics have been giving out ratings to determine movie quality. I personally have never heard of only 3 stars. I think that 0 to 5 is the standard, but it's not always stars that they use. Siskel and Ebert's thumbs up and thumbs down system comes to mind, and on some modern sites they simply give movies a numbered score between 0 and 5 without giving it a fun star to jazz it up. Video game critics are very similar. As a self-proclaimed video game content analyst, I've had experience in reviewing video games for a handful of websites, and each one has used a different rating system. I've used the 5 stars, simple 1 to 5s, and my personally least favorite, 1 to 10. Of course, that 1 to 10 scale is probably the most common in the video game criticism world, and there's plenty of jokes about it. I think the issue that I and others have with it is that 1 to 10 is simply too vast. Especially when most websites, IGN, relegate almost every single title somewhere between a 6 and a 10. Congrats, that's the 1 to 5 scale still. Further proof that it's the 1 to 5 scale is how the internet reacts to 6s and 7s. These are scores that many consider to be a death knell for any game. Sure, an occasional 1 or 3 out of 10 drives the point home that the game is a super duper dud, but most people steer away from anything lower than an 8 anyway. I'm ranting about all of this video game rating stuff because I've never dived into an explanation for my personal rating system before. Over on my website, thearcadebot.wixsite.com/games, I have brief descriptions next to each of the scores that I use, but I've never expanded into my reasoning for their existence before, so I will do so now just for because. But first, like any good cooking recipe online, I'm going to tell a story from my childhood before getting to the gall-darn point. When I was a young Nintendo GameCube playing boy, I enjoyed Sonic Adventure 2. Fantastic soundtrack in that game, by the way. When you finish a stage in Sonic Adventure 2, you receive a ranking. Imagine my displeasure as a young child who absolutely loathed grades in school when my fun video game about a cartoon hedgehog graded how well I was, having fun? A D? I got a D in Sonic? Ugh, and then that blue butthead had the nerve to say, "What do you think you're doing? Shut up, Sonic, you borderline irrelevant intellectual property." Of course, I realize that some people live for ranking systems in games. The idea of pushing toward a greater performance makes a great deal of sense. However, Sonic Adventure 2 instilled a never-dying hatred in me for grades and ranks in games. So, much like Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins, it's time for my enemies to share my fear. As that demonic hedgehog once assigned me letter grades, I now give letter grades to the games that I play. It's long been a popular way for people to rank things by using a tier list. My ranking system uses the same letter grades as most tier lists. I'm going to run through these grades and my brief descriptions for the games that one can expect to see in each category. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. F. One of 2 failing grade scores. Games that receive an F rating are, to put it bluntly, dumpster fires. A game that gets an F has to be doing a whole lot wrong. In some ways, it's almost hard to get an F unless you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. I've played a fair amount of games that I've given an F to while writing for other sites, and it's very obvious when a game is an F. Maybe they're unplayable or poorly coded, disastrously ugly, entirely unfun, or, quite often, a combination of all of the above. There's no redeeming quality to a game scored this low. In my opinion, the games that live down here at the bottom of the pile are the ones that you'll almost never hear about. Examples of games I've given an F to are Xenoraptor, Bounty Battle, Shing, as in like the sound a sword makes, I'm assuming, Shing, Cross Crush, and Dungeons and Bombs. And see, you didn't know any of those, did you? D, the second failing grade. Games with a D rating are functional, but not much more than that. While a game that gets an F will have you wondering why you even bother playing video games at all, a D will at least have one, possibly very tiny, redeeming quality. Night in the Woods, for example, has a fun visual style, but is barely a video game, and it has an insufferably awful story. Ghost Runner starts strong with its fast-paced, slicey action, but its second and third acts are horribly designed, and the overall experience is frustratingly buggy. Even with whatever redeeming quality a D game has, it's still a failing grade. C is the you just barely made it category. C-rated games are ho-hum. Not exceptional, not awful, and not that interesting. Here is the land of the completely average experiences. Guilt is a game I played this year that I'd categorize as a C. The Falconeer, almost every single Call of Duty. To steal an analogy from video game critic Yassi Croshaw, a game with a C grade is like a bag of potato chips. Yummy while you're playing it, but the second it's done, you'll likely never give it a second thought. B. Here's where things start to get good. A B is above average, and where, in my opinion, a lot of games live. A B rating is fairly common and signifies a well-made experience, despite a design flaw here or there. Planet of Lana, Crash Team Rumble, Fist, Forged in Shadowtorch, and Minecraft Legends, to name a few of the games I've played this year that I'd give B scores to. A B is the opposite of a D. Where the latter has tons of issues with one or two nice bits, the former will have tons of nice bits with one or two issues. A is quality. This is where the top shelf stuff lives. Any game with an A rating is a great time, enjoyable, well made, and worth playing. Pikmin 4, Hi-Fi Rush, Diablo 4, Hogwarts Legacy, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. These are some of the games I've played this year that I'd give an A rating to. Even an A-rated game might have an issue or an undesirable quirk here or there, but the overall experience is so good that those hypothetical issues are easily outshined. Now, you might be thinking, FDCBA, that's 5 rankings. This is still the 1 to 5 scale. It's just letters instead of numbers. To which I would say, yes. I'm an English major. I like letters more than numbers, so sue me. However, it's the final ranking that lives above A that makes this system work slightly differently than the 1 to 5 scale. An S rank has this legendary status to it. It's that above and beyond thing that teachers never stop talking about. In any game that ranks your performance, you'll feel pretty good about getting an A, and then whammo! You get an S rank and you feel like you've achieved the impossible. In terms of ranking video game quality, I consider S games ones that are not only exceptionally made, but special experiences that either push the medium forward or exist as completely unique pieces of art. Sometimes an S-rank game might be buggy or lacking in polish, but it delivers such a pure, unfiltered vision of what a team of passionate and creative people were striving to create that it's impossible for me to get the game out of my head. This year's Clash Artifacts of Chaos fits that description specifically. Other times, of course, they capture that spark of human creativity while also being ultra-polished. Other games I'd give an S rating to are Undertale, Outer Wilds, Monster Hunter Rise, The Pathless, my personal favorite game of all time, and, most recently, this year's Remnant 2. Again, I mostly decided to talk about all of this just 'cause, but I think it's important for a critic to understand how they categorize and rate things. Some critics don't use rating systems at all, and that's entirely fine. Like the best reviews, reviewing systems ought to be largely subjective. To quote Jason Gastro, aka Video Game Donkey, the strength of a critic lies in the consistency of their voice. Ideally, you don't go to a critic for a single review because that wouldn't be terribly informative. You ought to know what they respond to. If, like me, you're not the biggest fan of fighting games, you wouldn't gain much from seeing that I consider BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle and Injustice 2 to be wholly underwhelming games that I'd give a C rating to. But when you see that I'd give the fighting game Guilty Gear Strive an S ranking, that should be telling you, whoa, maybe I ought to check that game out. Then, when you try Guilty Gear Strive and you don't like it at all, you can get mad at me and tell me I'm a horrible critic. I certainly need a degree of objectivity in my reviews, but ultimately I'll praise the things that I like and sneer at the things that I don't. Using a critic like me for your personal gaming research is easier the more reviews that I have. I'm always in the process of playing new releases, but I'm hoping to have reviews both new and old updated onto my site more frequently in the future so that one could take a quick look through my lettered categories, get an idea for how I critique things, and then make more informed purchases themselves. Because as someone who loves experiencing the boundless creativity that video games have to offer, I want as many people as possible to find the games that they connect with in order to keep the industry going and to create more new, exciting, fun, and artistic ideas. Where it gets really hard for consumers, however, is going to those big sites such as IGN or Polygon for reviews. With so many critics coming and going, you don't really know who's playing the game. It just becomes a simultaneously homogeneous and contradictive blob. Example, Polygon's review of 2019's Remnant from the Ashes had plenty of praise, while the sequel, Remnant 2, was raked across the coals this year. It's not a mystery as to why, because the two reviews were provided by two completely different people. However, these reviews take this stance as Polygon's official perceptions of the games. I'm not by any means saying the person that disliked and reviewed Remnant 2 for Polygon doesn't have a valuable opinion, because I'm sure there are those who would find the review an informative way to inform their own opinion. However, both fans of the first game and those who didn't play the first game, but might have loved it, and might love the sequel, would probably get a whole lot more out of a sequel review if it came from someone that reviewed the original. This doesn't just apply to sequels, however. The biggest issue is that loss of consistency. How is anyone supposed to make an informed decision from a single website when the persons speaking are constantly shifting? I've definitely contributed to the problem because I've written for video game review sites as one of many voices, as unfortunately it's the nature of the beast when it comes to scraping together video game critic payment, which is why I want to fill my personal website with much more of my reviews, in an attempt to become as useful a critiquing tool as Yahtzee Croshaw, Video Game Donkey, or Iron Pineapple. Critics that are constantly providing a consistent opinion on video game content in order to help people connect with experiences they might not have found otherwise. I think that's all that I have for now. In the future, I'd like to use this podcast as a way to talk about rambly topics like this, or simply to record some of my written reviews. Thanks for listening to the Arcade Cast. Stay tuned for the next one.